Good morning and welcome to Borders and Bullets Global Game Controversies. Thank you for coming out on this very early Sunday morning. I'm sure a lot of you were out late last night. I know I was. My cab last night took me to the wrong place twice and then dropped me off at a drug deal. So I had a little adventure. All the Bostonians out there are like, yeah.
Yeah.
So I am Robert Rath. I'm a columnist at The Escapist magazine. I write critical intel. And we're going to go down and introduce our panelists.
Great. Hi, I'm Elisa Melendez. I am obviously from Miami, the way that I just said that. I am a PhD student, hopefully soon to be candidate of sociology at Florida International University.
I'm Steve Watts. I'm a freelance writer, and you can find me mostly on Shack News.
Hey everybody, I'm James Portnow. I write Arcade. I have worked on games ranging from the Call of Duty series to Farmville. I run a design consulting firm in Seattle, Washington. I have a professorship at DigiPen. I do stuff. I hang out.
Things.
And we're going to, first of all, just a couple of housekeeping things. If you have a question, please hold it for the end. We had some very enthusiastic people at Prime who jumped in right in the middle. And if you don't get your question answered, you don't want to ask it at the microphone, you can tweet us with hashtag PAX BB.
Yeah. We have a hashtag.
We have a hashtag.
We will once you start tweeting, at least.
And anyone on Twitch, you can tweet us at PAX BB as well. All right, so we're going to be talking about international bans, controversies, and in general, the ways that video games are overlapping with real life in increasing ways, whether through depicting foreign wars, depicting foreign people, or just sort of getting into trouble overseas. And we've selected a couple of examples. You can see that there are many, many reasons that a game could face a ban, get into controversy. From just kind of things that, like conflicting with local law. Any kind of Nazi symbolism is illegal to put into a purchased product in Germany. For example, Saudi Arabia banned Pokemon cards because they have a Stars of David on them, and they believe it was promoting Zionism. Really, I was actually contacted by a Saudi Arabian gamer the last time we did this panel who said, you know, that actually got reversed pretty quick because it became clear that someone had an agenda, and Saudi Arabian gamers actually came out and were just like, no, this is dumb. You know, come on. And they would talk to Nintendo and got an official statement of what all the translations were and what the game was about. And of course, there's politically controversial things. South Korea tends to ban any game depicting North Korea because it's just politically chancy. They don't want to risk antagonizing North Korea. So these are some examples of how games increasingly overlap with the real world. Above you see the Oasis Hotel in Modern Warfare 3's final mission, Ashes to Ashes. Below, this is the actual lobby of the Burj Al Arab. So we actually see a real location that is being depicted digitally. And of course, down here we have Medal of Honor Warfighter had a backdoor relationship with some arms companies that was very, very open, where you could purchase some of the weapons that were involved in the game. Or rather, you could click a link on their website that was sponsored that would take you to a website where you could figure out how to purchase those firearms. The profits from that did go to a charity, I should add. Mm-hmm. And of course, we have things overlapping with real military figures like Oliver North. And as we see there, here's a blog post from the Medal of Honor Warfighter website. Because of backlash after some reporting on this, they actually went back on it. They removed all this stuff from the site. And instead, they used DLC to donate to that charity. So luckily, that money did get where it was supposed to go. And frankly, it was probably a lot more money from DLC than from buying a $2,000 rifle, because not that many people are going to shell out for that. So Steve has a really interesting example of what kind of interesting things this can lead to, because when the reality of the real world is selectively applied to games. As we all know, as games look more real, we expect them to behave by real-world rules increasingly. You like to hear, or you get to hear a lot of things about, well, Battlefield 3 is a lot better than Call of Duty because they simulate bullet drop and the right guns, and the guns behave more correctly in Battlefield 3. But, Steve, what is not covered?
Yeah. They cover the mechanical aspects of war more and more realistically, and verisimilitude as far as the looks of locations and weapons. What they don't really cover very realistically is the rules of war, such as war crimes. And about 1.5 years ago, there was a controversy, mostly a controversy in the gamer community, when there was a report published about how often war crimes happen in video games. Obviously, it's not a war crime to play a video game, but the way they depict the things that you do, if you did that, you should probably be tried in The Hague. Because there's a lot of shooting of unarmed opponents after they've been disarmed. There's a lot of fighting in and around churches and national landmarks, which you are not supposed to do because you could destroy them. And strangely enough, as the slide points out, the AC-130 mission in Call of Duty 4, that report actually praised, because if you shot people who were non-combatants, it was like mission failed, you screwed up.
Can anyone else think of any recent examples? Well, I've got one.
Next slide.
There we go. There's been an increasing tendency to, while the wars in the Middle East start to wind down, we're increasingly starting to look for other countries that we can portray in war games. And Mexico has been kind of a go-to location recently, what with Call of Juarez, the Cartel, which was a very, very problematic game in many, many aspects. And there have also been some sort of accidental parallels, like with Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter 2, which was not about the Mexican Cartel War in any context, but because it had some similarities, there were Mexican military elements that turned against the government. That is actually happening quite a bit in the cartel war. Cartels will recruit directly out of the military. The Los Zetas cartel, it was formed by an elite portion of the Mexican Army's Airmobile group. So it's a thing that is actually happening, and the Mexican government got very upset about this, saying, look, you're making our country look bad. We rely on border trade. We don't want people afraid to come down here. And this was before this is back in 2007 with GRAW 2. This is really before things started to heat up and things started to get really bad. They're now starting to de-escalate, actually, thankfully, after about 70,000 people have been killed. Army of Two, the Devil's Cartel, is using it as a setting. I talked to someone from the Army of Two team this weekend, actually, and I heard very encouraging things about how they looked at what happened with Call of Juarez, the cartel, and said, we really don't want to be that. Like, we don't want to go there. And they talked to the Mexican government early on, ran it through Latin American stakeholders, and we'll see how the game turns out. But I like the fact that they have put in effort to try and address those issues. So the upside of Call of Juarez, the cartel, is that, hey, out of curiosity, first of all, who was here last year? Just raise your hand. Okay, cool.
A lot of repeat customers.
Who watched the Call of Juarez episode on, what's your show called, James? I'm really tired. Extra credits. Okay, so you guys understand what the problems were with this game. Basically, it treated the war as a playground. And you did things like instigate gang wars and try and get gang members from one side to kill gang members from the other side. And one of the problems with portraying conflict like this is that really people don't understand this conflict to begin with. So when they start getting images of it that are not correct or might just be based on exploitation films from the 70s, it is a roadblock to people actually understanding and being empathetic with what is going on in the world. Now, there's also problems with representation of people. And Elisa, this is your area.
Yeah, that's where I turn in. As was mentioned before, there's an increased reliance on the realistic as a selling point for a lot of games, and that tends to be problematic when we take only some of it seriously, but then not all of it, and they don't take responsibility for sort of depicting things realistically, but not responsibly. With great power comes great responsibility, and it's a great point to make. We like to shoot brown people a lot, and that's not cool. What ends up happening is video games are now becoming a cultural production that we want to be seen with the same kind of respect as your film, your literature, etc. And because of that, they need to be held to the same kind of critical standards, and cultural productions historically have been used to not only entertain, but through that entertainment, tell stories about what it is to be a member of that culture and what it is to be a member of the other. In creating the other, we also create ourselves, and we are often very much the heroes as opposed to the other. And it's not necessarily just in a sort of military shooter kind of fashion. And I'm going to bring this up because it's very recent and I haven't stopped thinking about it, and it's going to be weird and kind of a non sequitur, but it's kind of a really interesting example. Who here plays Ridiculous Fishing?
Oh my God, you all have to play Ridiculous
Play
Fishing. What are you
Ridiculous
doing?
Fishing, which is kind of weird, and which is why I feel conflicted, about what I'm going to talk about, which is the idea of, if you've played Ridiculous Fishing, it's a great iOS game. I love it. It's addicting. I have spent way too many hours on that thing. The great thing about it is it's like $3 and you fish in a ridiculous fashion. It's just whatever. It's awesome. You shoot things and you can put a Tesla coil on your lure and it's whatever. It's a toaster and a hairdryer and jellyfish, and I love it. And the problem, and the really cool thing is that there's a shop to upgrade your stuff, and you don't have to pay real money to upgrade things. You just play the game. What a novel concept. Which is why, my heart is on my sleeve for this game. At the same time, slight controversy in the idea that your shop merchant, who's on a boat, is wearing a conically shaped hat, which seems to be a, like Asian stereotype, kind of racist. And it was I didn't even notice it until it was pointed out through this Twitter exchange, where someone tweeted at the developer, any particular reason for the hat on that shopkeeper? Keeping in mind, I will not accept any reason you could possibly come up with, because there's, which is an interesting point, because I'm like, there is absolutely no reason why that hat needs to be on the person's head. There's no bearing on storyline whatsoever. Which, by the way, the game kind of has a storyline, and I was like, kind of touched at the end of it, which is really weird for a $3 game. But the response to that. The cool thing is about social media nowadays is that we have ever-increasing access to the creators of our cultural productions, which is awesome and not so awesome, depending on, whether you're hurling death threats or praise. But the response to that was, you'd have to ask, this is from one of the developers of Vlambeer, you'd have to ask @RoddenGunman for that. He came up with it. Problem with that is that Twitter account that he mentioned is a fake Twitter account for the character in the game. So rather than sort of dealing with it and saying, wow, that's interesting, maybe I should consider this, or, really, I'm sorry if it was like, refer to this fake Twitter account, like, whatever. Probably not the best move. There's a really, really good blog post about it if you sort of eventually Google it by Daphne, who wrote about it and kind of talked about the gray area about being so conflicted with something that you love so much and then having this sort of little small piece of like causal racism. You know, this isn't like military shooter grade, but it happens, you know, any time that we can depict anything with a, you know, sort of seamless, you know, seemingly limitless amount of pixels that we have at our disposal to create these awesome virtual worlds. $3 game, iconically shaped hat. Now, cool thing is that eventually a dialogue did arise from it. It's supposed to be a reference to a Vietnamese boat merchant. Okay, right? Clarification, I guess. You know, but not entirely, you know, unproblematic. But they realize this. The same person that referred the person to the fake Twitter account also said, there's a really good blog post about it from this person. Go read it and refer to it as well. So it's engaging in the dialogue rather than saying, what? Racist? No, we're not racist. How dare you? I employ brown
Oh, you're
people.
racist for thinking
So he's
that.
like, you're racist for coming at me and, you know, saying that I'm racist. You're the racist. But it's definitely a show of like how a dialogue can happen around these things, not just reserved for sort of big, major, sort of AAA productions, but even trickling down to a hat, a simple hat.
A lot of time it's not necessarily even the thing itself. It's partially how people talk about it. And if, you know, it's just a lot easier sometimes to just be like, you know, that might be a little problematic. Sorry, or maybe we'll think about, you know, changing that in the sequel. Maybe we'll think about patching it. A little while ago, there was a Call of Duty map. I think it might have been Call of Duty 4. It was a long time ago where some Arabic script was...
Karachi.
It was what?
Karachi.
Karachi, yes, the map Karachi. Some Arabic script was in a bathroom above a toilet, which is horribly offensive, but they didn't know. Like, and when someone pointed that out, they went, oh, yeah, you're right, our bad. And they patched it and they took it out.
I thought you were going to give the other example. Unfortunately, on Karachi, we had Arabic script on the street signs, and so there was some other work to be done there, too.
But yeah, that wasn't noticed for years. And, you know, it was very retroactive. I mean, years later, they were just like, oh, yeah, that's kind of a problem. We'll fix it. So it can be, I mean, it can be done. It can be easy. Can anyone think of any other examples recently of problematic characters they've seen?
Well, I think that you had a critical intel on Far Cry 3 that you might want to briefly go over.
Oh yeah, that.
I did, yeah.
when we're done about it.
Oh yeah.
I had a real problem with the depiction of Citra in Far Cry 3. And I'm from Hawaii. I've been around the Pacific. And how many people have played Far Cry 3? Raise your hands. It's a really good game. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun playing it. And it is a satirical game. Like, they're trying to do kind of borderline, offensive, uncomfortable things. Like, they specifically have you killing endangered animals. For example, you'll be shooting like Galapagos tortoises.
The ultimate version of each animal is like the ultra rare version. Go kill like a white tiger instead of a regular tiger.
Go kill the blood Komodo, of which only one exists, and then make it into a sack to carry more bullets to kill more animals. Like, and you know, it is funny, and like when you get it, like you get it. But the problem is there was so much going on in that game, and they put so many elements into it that there were a lot of things they were trying to like upend stereotypes, and they were trying to upend so many they just didn't get to a bunch. So there are just these really hardcore stereotypes that never get addressed. Like the idea, the writer decided that the entire point of this game would be like a subversion of The Princess and the Castle, where it's hard because it's the end, but something...
Spoiler alerts.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
Spoiler alerts.
In one of the endings, something... when you save Citra, the priestess, she does something very nasty to you, proving that she did not need to be saved all along. But the kind of like warrior queen, like shaman thing that she's been going through the entire game, it really goes back to 18th century depictions of Polynesians that actually originated in the sideshow, in the freak show, where tattooed men would come out, and the story behind them would be like, I was a sailor and I got wrecked on a Pacific island, and the women took me and they tattooed me to show their ownership of me, and it was kind of like being raped. It sucked. Like literally, this is what it meant, and that's essentially what happens to Jason. Is he gets shipwrecked, and the tribe taking ownership of him, starts tattooing him and using him like a tool, and then there's like human sacrifice, and it's just a little gross to be showing Pacific Islanders sacrificing people in the modern day. It would be kind of like, let's make a game about Texas where everyone owns slaves and massacres Indians. Like, it's just a little off. And I understand what they were going for, which was to say like, haha, look, this is the kind of things that you believe. Unfortunately, so many people know so little about the Pacific Islands, they might actually kind of believe that. The idea that, oh yes, there is this corner of the world that is dark and savage, and terrible things happen there, and people can't be away from civilization too long, or they will lose their civilization, and they will start to behave like animals. And this is what people believed in the 18th century and 19th century, and if you've ever been out to the Pacific, it's like, no, everything's cool. I don't gotta fight drug-addicted pirates to get to school, it's okay. Like, you go to Pohnpei, it's like, if people are poor, like, they'll, use a car battery as a seat sometimes, but, it's just a good use of resources. It's fine. You might get a tropical disease. That's okay. You'll ride it out. So I had some issues with that. And again, that's something that it was intentionally put there to subvert your expectations, but unfortunately, they just didn't subvert everything. And does everyone know the phrase hipster racism? Which is just like, I'm being racist, but not really. I'm going to tell this racist joke, but since we're all totally post-racial and post any of that, then it's totally cool because everyone knows I'm just joking. But that still hurts, when people hear that. It's not it's not fun to be the target of that. So that's one example recently.
Yeah, and I think, and it's sort of, I guess, like the most tangential connection ever, but that was sort of all I could think about when I was thinking about the choice you make at the end, which, whatever, spoil it. It's like, save your friends, go back to the life you once knew, let it change, or, save the warrior queen who loves you and wants you to be the warrior, and you're kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of hot. But, this sort of choice you make, like, I couldn't help but think of, especially because, you're confronted with two women, and there's, the sort of like the white woman, the white American, and then the Pacific Islander, and it sort of kind of called me back to research that a colleague of mine is doing on mail order brides, where she's constantly seeing these depictions of sort of the other, depending on whether they're in the Philippines or in South America or in Russia, whatever, or definitely like Latin America, South America, and the Caribbean, as these women being exotic, more traditional, more sexualized, powerful, but somehow still submissive. There'll be a tiger in the bed, but you'll still be their king, kind of thing. Versus these sort of white, annoying, feminist from the first world who will just nag you to death and demands to be equal, and like, I'm being so repressed right now. So what I saw was this sort of, not just a choice, that was being made there, and then, of course, the depiction of the magical native is like, oh, great, again, thanks. But I'm sort of, seeing this kind of trope being played out of, the exotic problematize, unproblematized but problematic other exotic female power. So that's, of course, coming from a gender perspective. I was like, oh yeah, I totally see.